I have a confession. I'm a 40-something Midwestern mom with a pile of degrees, a failed marriage, no assets, and no idea what the rest of my life is going to look like. Confession number 2. I'm beginning to think that there is a great adventure tucked within this daunting and unexpected reality. And my final and seemingly unrelated confession is this. I've grown a little weary of Sunday morning sermons. Hi, I'm Tam, and this is the somewhat boring but necessary introduction to this little venture that I've got going on called Life is Pulpit. And in those introductory statements, you heard a few confessions, a little bit about the nature of my life and some of my weariness. So let me just provide a little bit more explanation for that. So I do find myself in this really interesting place in life where I've got some vocational uncertainty, new things going on, new skills that I'm learning, new dreams that I'm dreaming. And I've kind of decided to call this a midlife awakening rather than a midlife crisis because that sounds a whole lot more fun, which I'll probably talk a little bit more about that at some point. But up to this point, vocationally at least, I have held the title of pastor or had coveted positions in higher education. And now I'm in this really new place in my life. And so as a pastor's kid, as a pastor myself, I have spent a lot of time either sitting in a chair in front of the pulpit listening to a message or actually speaking behind a pulpit myself. Metaphorically speaking. As I find myself tossed between the extremes of chaos and boredom in this midlife thing, I'm drawn further and deeper into the conviction that nobody needs a podium or a position or a platform for their life to speak. And I'm weary of the status quo of simply checking off a box by listening to a sermon. It just doesn't cut it as I wrestle with and celebrate the complexity of my own humanity. And it just doesn't cut it for all of humanity that's designed for community and relationship. Our culture is full of people who are leaving the church and deconstructing their faith and labeling themselves ex-evangelicals. And there just seems to be this longing for something more. Or maybe it's a longing for something less complicated, less black and white, less judgmental. I so often long for this myself. It seems like creation is groaning for something more meaningful, more purposeful, more connected to one another, where there's more love and peace and purpose and love. And did I mention love? Maybe we just get back to love and what that looks like in everyday life. And it's those thoughts and a whole bunch of other things that have led me to start thinking about what it would look like to live my life as pulpit and to invite others to join into that as well. So life is pulpit. What the heck does that even mean? All right, so a pulpit is a podium that's on a platform in a church, and typically there will be a few songs sung, a few prayers prayed, and then the preacher will get up and deliver some sort of message that comes from scripture and hopefully has some sort of application to life. And I'm really familiar with that particular structure as a pastor's kid. Spent a lot of time sitting there. I would sit with my mom and my two sisters in near the front somewhere, and really the goal was just to keep our mouths shut and not be too disruptive. And most of the time I succeeded at that, but then every once in a while I got yanked out of church by my mother, which was kind of the walk of shame, a little bit of a humiliating experience, and she would drag us out of the sanctuary outside, find a switch on a tree, and give us a good whooping. Obviously, that was a different time. She's a beautiful, good woman. Different time. But all that to say, I'm very familiar with the pulpit. And then I was the one preaching later in my life. And as many speakers, preachers these days, I didn't actually use a pulpit, but rather would usually memorize my messages, or some people will have their message on an iPad so that they can pace around. I like to pace and talk with my hands and all those things. So there wasn't an actual physical structure of a pulpit, but regardless of what that looks like, the essence of the pulpit remains the same. So, I mean, really, the goal is that there will be some challenge, some inspiration, some growth, some new knowledge that comes about when you listen to someone speak behind a pulpit. That there will be a connection with God, that there will be a connection with one another, that there will be a connection with the world, and understanding of what Scripture says and why that matters. And so that's what the pulpit is for. And yet, somehow, over time, the nature of the pulpit has changed. And in the way that it's changed, it's caused people to become more and more disconnected from that structure and that way of gathering and that way of being. The nature of the pulpit generally lends itself to power rather than mutuality, authority rather than friendship, guardedness rather than vulnerability, judgment rather than mercy, and lecture rather than conversation. At the least, I think that it's this perception that sometimes keeps people away from church. And although this isn't always the case, the nature of the pulpit can also communicate that it's only the pastor who has the knowledge and connection with God to inspire and challenge and encourage. But remember, nobody needs a podium or a position for their life to speak. It's in the ordinary places and moments of daily life that purpose is found. Common spaces provide opportunities for conversations or silent interactions become more raw and meaningful than we could ever imagine. My life speaks to yours, and your life speaks to mine. The coffee shop, a car ride, the bar, the kitchen, the salon, the couch, the back porch. See, these are all places that provide a pulpit for life to speak. Anticipation, grief, disappointment, sadness, anger, joy, insecurity. These are all emotions that provide a pulpit for life to speak. Music, art, media, dance, travel, nature. This is the stuff of life that provides a pulpit, speaking profound messages to the soul. I really am finding an unbelievable amount of joy in being able to have random conversations with random people in random places and recognizing that those moments are filled with love, that they're filled with new knowledge and new insight, that it's those experiences that lead me to a new understanding of the vastness of God and the world that we live in. And I want to capture each one of those moments. And so I'm excited to do that with you and just share with you some of those experiences that I have that teach me something new about life, just in the simplicity of going through daily life. And so I want to invite you to kind of join me on that. So I came up with a few pointers to get us started, and I didn't mean for this to happen, but it turned out real super cheesy. And the pointers that I came up with, it spells out the word pulpit, so just bear with me in that and join me in that experience. Live with passion. Dare to dream. Take risks. Say and do hard things. Laugh, cry, feel, speak, listen. U is for unique. You are unique. Your life has so much to offer the world with every interaction and every conversation. Live as if you actually believe that. Be unrelentlessly and unashamedly you. Learn. Learn from mistakes and successes. What's everyday life teaching you? What are the circumstances of the world teaching you? What are your questions and doubts and hopes and dreams teaching you? Learn. P is for places. Identify places. Every place you go provides an opportunity for your life to speak and for someone else to speak hope and truth and peace into your life. What places do you go on a regular basis? Think about the places you go to work, shop, relax, exercise, eat, socialize, worship. Reflect on the conversations you have in those places, the people you know and meet, the way that you feel, and expect the unexpected. I is for inspiration. Be inspired. Inspiration is a choice. We've somehow bought into this narrative that it's the responsibility of something or someone outside of ourselves to inspire us. It's the author's fault if a book doesn't provoke inspiration. A songwriter has failed if the music doesn't stir us. We may even blame God for our dull emotions on a cloudy day. Choose inspiration. And finally, T is for train. Intentionally living life with purpose every day doesn't come naturally. It'll take some practice. Give yourself grace and also make a plan and stick to it. This will look a little different for everyone. You may want to meditate or begin writing in a journal. Reflect, ask questions, go to new places, meet new people, share real stories, be open to those who are different from you. Find a friend that you can meet with to talk about what you're learning, what's inspiring you, and talk about the unexpected meaning that you're finding in unexpected places. Engage every service provider you encounter with kindness and a smile. Step out of your comfort zone. Maybe have a conversation longer than 5 minutes with a stranger at least once this week. Or if that already feels comfortable to you, have a random conversation with a random stranger at least once every single day. Choose to make every single moment matter. Welcome to Life as Pulpit, an experiment in finding the meaning and the message in the mundane, the messiness, the mischief, the mistakes, and the mystery of everyday life.